I can't fix this 2013 Kia Ceed GT.
Not only does it have the problem with the gear stick,
it also has a really bad misfire on cold start that I can't get to the bottom of. Not good.
Because after trying and changing various components, the misfire still remains. Firstly, I tried the coils, then I tried spark plugs, I also got the injectors tested and cleaned, and that still didn't solve it.
It is still misfiring.
I even removed the ECU and got it checked in case it had a bad tune, and that even came back as stock. I've checked the coolant temperature sensor on the live data, I've checked the VVT solenoid,
and I also did a smoke test, all of which were fine.
Now I'm left with a broken car with no clue on how to fix it, which isn't ideal because I need to fix this car ASAP so I can put it up for swaps on my journey to swapping my way up to a supercar.
So, instead of me filming another episode of me messing around with this car and trying to get to the bottom of it, I think sometimes in life you need to cry for help.
And with all my options starting to run out, I think that is going to be the best option for me.
So, the plan is to take this car to the lads at Woodborough Garage, who are my local garage that always offer to help with any of my projects. Ewan and Danny are absolute legends, and I do trust their work.
Now, I try and do everything myself on this channel, and that is something that I have lived by, and that is why I've not asked the lads at Woodborough Garage to actually fix the car. Instead, I've just asked them to test all the components to do with cold start, anything to do with fueling or air, anything of the sort. Just test all the components instead of me firing parts and money at a car that might not even need them parts replacing. So I'm going to leave the car with them for about a week so they can test all the parts, look at live datas, and actually see if things are doing what they should be.
Well, it has now been about a week and a half since I dropped the car off at Woodborough Garage. I simply asked them if they could just check everything once over, just do checks on all the sensors before I start throwing money at parts, replacing them myself. I just wanted them to check everything through to make sure if it was either good or bad. And the reason it has took them so long is because you only get about 40 seconds of a misfire to check everything on the live data, compare it to when it's running fine. You only get 40 seconds to check in about 3 hours. So you turn the car on, it misfires for about 40 seconds, and once it stopped misfiring, you then have to wait like 4 hours for it to do it again. So the lads have busted their back, staying late every night just to try and check as many things as possible. And as a result of that, everything is working, which isn't really the news I wanted. I wanted something to be faulty, but it's not. Everything's doing as it should. And as a result of checking pretty much every component on this car, they managed to find something that is honestly going to shock you.
Now, this car is obviously a 2013 on a 63 plate Kia Ceed GT.
And after speaking to a couple of other Ceed GT owners, we actually managed to see that there was a little bit of a difference in these engines.
So here's a picture of the engine from a 2014, which is pretty much the same as this car. This is what the engine should look like, which on first glance you've got the radiator cap on top of the two coolant pipes there, and you've got no pipe going to the header tank for obviously the coolant expansion. So that is pretty much what we're seeing here. Now this is the engine bay on a Kia Ceed GT from 2017, which on further kind of research, these engines did actually change from, I think it was a facelift to a facelift. I don't know much about these, this is why we've only just found this out. And as you can see, on this engine, there is no radiator cap on top of them two coolant pipes. There is just like a blanking plug. And if you can see, just there, coming from underneath the manifold, the inlet manifold, you can actually see a hose that goes up around behind this washer bottle thing and then into that header tank, which obviously my car doesn't have. So on first glance you would just think that this is the correct engine for this car, with no extra pipe going to that coolant tank and also the radiator cap being on top of them two coolant pipes. But one thing I didn't notice when I took the inlet manifold off was this coolant pipe underneath the inlet that had a bolt wedged in the end and was held in by a Jubilee clamp. This is the same pipe that would go up to the header tank on the newer engines. Now if we look at when I actually did take the inlet manifold off, you can see that I actually removed the two pipes off the inlet manifold, which would indicate that this isn't actually part of the engine. So the question really is, why do I have this coolant pipe with nowhere for it to go and a big old bolt in the end of it blocking it off?
Now, I've never claimed to be an expert, but I definitely feel like that bolt in that hose with a Jubilee clamp on it is something that wouldn't have come out of the factory when this car was made. Which now opens the question as to what engine is in this car. Why is there a hose blanked off on this car that doesn't have anywhere for it to actually go? This would suggest that this engine is actually from a newer model of the Kia Ceed GTs. Now this was all just a guessing game and speculation, that is until Ewan and Danny actually found this.
This is actually a job sheet for the history of this car. So as you can see at the bottom, in 2019 at Sandycliff Kia in Nottingham, the engine actually got removed because of an oil leak and a hole in the block. So it's safe to say this isn't the original engine, which now makes me think that maybe it might be the wrong one.
Which of course now makes me think that this engine is actually from a newer model. The engine's actually got changed from 2017. So from 2013 to 2017, these engines would have had the rad cap, and also they wouldn't have had that hose coming out of the engine block. And from 2017 onwards, they'd have had the rad cap blocked off and they'd have had that coolant hose coming up, around and into this header tank.
Now, you're probably thinking, well, a header tank and a coolant hose and a little radiator cap isn't going to be the reason why this car is misfiring. But hear me out. So with these engines being pretty much the same, but there being a slight difference, means that there also could be a slight difference in the ECU. It's okay putting this engine in this car, but if the ECU is missing a single bit of data, it could cause a tiny little mishap, just like the one we're having.
I don't actually know, but I'm assuming because this car has had an engine swap and everything is doing what it should be, I'm wondering whether there is something to do with this engine and that ECU that isn't communicating properly on that initial first start up, that is confusing the rest of the car. And once you turn it off and turn it back on again, it completely remembers what it should be doing. At this point, I'm guessing as well.
But to save any more speculation, I want to know exactly what engine is in my car, and the engine codes on these are located on the bell housing. What I want to be looking for is the engine number at the top of the logbook just here. So I'm going to get my bore scope out and actually have a look at what code is engraved on this engine block.
Okay, so the engine codes I was looking for was either a G4 FJD, which is the engine that's meant to be in this car, but the newer engine from the 2017 is a G4 FJH, and what is actually in this car is a G4 FJG, which I have not a clue what that can actually be out of. I have no idea, but at least we've got the engine code that is actually in this car currently, which of course does not match up to the OEM one that is meant to be in there. So that is 1000% confirmed this isn't the original engine. What this is out of, I'm not sure. We're gonna have to do some digging. So what we have found out is that technically this is the same engine, it just isn't the engine that came
in this car. It is one from a newer model, which we have confirmed by knowing that this isn't the original engine, and of course it has that coolant pipe down there that is meant to go to that header tank, which our one is a complete different shape. The question now is, did the person that did this engine swap actually update the ECU to the newer software for the newer engines? And I've got one way we can check. So now what I want to do is head over to the scan tool and actually check that what I am reading and what ECU I'm communicating with matches to the VIN number on this car. So I'm going to simply hit read VIN on the diagnostic tool and take a picture of this VIN number. Now all I've got to do is find out what VIN number is actually on this chassis. Is that it? Okay, here we go. Okay, so we've got U5 YHP31 LEL011189. Okay, so that is still the original ECU. Well, that's one good thing. We know that that is definitely the original ECU that is in this car. So maybe, just maybe, that ECU needs to go to the main dealer and be updated to the newer engines. I'm not sure. At this point, I'm kind of just guessing as well as you guys, but I guess I'm going to have to make this video another diagnosing video and maybe resort to the comments or any experts out there that might be able to help me with this, because I don't really know. One thing we actually did get to the bottom of off camera was the engine light P2261 code, which ended up just being a cracked boost solenoid that had ended up splitting and was leaking air. So when it comes to Monday, I can order one of them from Kia and get that issue ticked off the list. Well, for now, we have got to wait until Monday when Kia opens and I can make a few phone calls and cross-reference a few parts to find out a little bit more about the misfire. But that being said, we have still got a couple of issues remaining with this car. The first one is the gear shifter slash kind of gear gator, and I think I've found the solution. This should be a replacement gear gator. I actually found this on eBay and it was the only one for sale in the entire country. This is a OEM gator from a Kia Ceed GT, of course, and it actually has the little knob that you lift up to allow you access to that reverse gear. So the issue that we've been having is there is no kind of restriction on being able to put this car into reverse. So when driving, you can very easily just put the car into reverse instead of first. Now this is obviously going to sit like that, but with this having the little lever to pull up, which will put tension on that spring, what I'm thinking is on the underneath of this gator there is a little plastic door which should slide nicely on top of that plastic kind of retainer there, hold that spring in place, which will then hold tension down until you lift up and want to go into reverse. That way, with this on, you shouldn't be able to just select reverse without lifting that spring. This took me absolutely ages to find. I thought I needed this part and I didn't realise that this part here was, well, part of the actual gear gator. I have had to search for hours and hours to figure that out, but we have now got to somehow get all this interior out so we can put this gator in place, which should sit something like that. There we go. So to take out the plastics, there's two Phillips head screws each side of the back of the armrest, and then you can go inside the armrest, remove this little bit of carpet, which will then reveal the two 10mm bolts that need to come out. But then as I was taking the two Phillips head screws out that were underneath where the gear gator should be, I stopped and realised something. It's a good job I just stopped and figured that out for myself, because I noticed that the screws that were holding this console in had definitely never been taken out because they were really tight, and also the one down here just wouldn't budge. And then I realised someone has taken this boot off without taking this console out. So you must be able to put it back on without taking the console off. And then I realised you can simply separate the boot from the chrome trim. We already have the chrome trim, so what I think we need to do now is take off the spring, put the boot on. I'm not going to fully attach it yet. Put the boot on, then need to put the spring on, which once the gear knob's on, that will hold tension so I can pull up and down on the lever. And then once we put this gear knob on, what that should do is hold the spring tension, and that bit that's underneath the boot should stop it now going over into reverse. And now that should go up and down, which it does, and we shouldn't, which we can't, be able to get into reverse until we lift up and go over, and it springs back into place. That is job done. It just goes to show sometimes you're better off just sitting back and actually figuring something out instead of just going all at it and then making any mistakes. But at least now we can tick that off the list and add it to the price of what it's cost to fix this car.
Which actually cost me £25.99, which I don't think is too bad to say. That was literally the only one for sale on the whole of eBay. So yeah, £25.99, and all the gearing and that shift knob is all sorted. But the next issue that we are having, which isn't really an issue, it's something that definitely needs doing, is when we turn the ignition on, we are greeted with a service required minus 17 days, which means this car is overdue a service by 17 days. So we've got some oil, we have some filter, and we have some car. So we're going to do a quick oil change. And I have read a lot of the comments. Some people are saying that a quick oil change may even fix the misfire. Very, very, very much doubtful, but we've got to do one anyway, so let's see.
So now I'm going to get the car jacked up and then undo the two 10mm bolts holding the front under tray on. And now I can simply undo the two other 10mm bolts that were holding this rear under tray on, so then that will give me access to the oil filter and also the sump plug. And with them out my way, I can now undo the sump plug and start draining all of the oil. Once the oil's drained, I can refit that sump plug and make sure to torque it up to spec. And now it's time to remove the old oil filter, which I'm not sure when it was last done because it was really tight. Now I'm going to just prep the new oil filter by filling it up with oil and making sure to put some oil around the rubber O-ring, and now I can refit it and then fill the car back up with oil.
Now with a quick search on the Kia website, we can actually see there is two petrol GT GDI engines. If we look at the first one, which is a petrol GT, that is a 1.6 2013 to 2015, that takes 4.5 litres of oil, but the engine that is currently in this car, which is the newer 2016 to 2018, this one only takes 4 litres. So shout out to Kia. So now we know this engine needs 4 litres of oil. And now the oil change is all done, we can add that to our list, and that cost me £32 for the oil and the filter, of course, from Motorstop. So we can now pretty much tick the oil and filter off, we can tick spark plugs off, we can tick the shifter off, and we can tick the coil pack off. The one we can't tick off yet is the engine light to do that turbo bypass valve, and obviously the misfire. But there's one job left to do, and that is reset that service light. So we want to go to special function, oil reset, Kia, automatic detection. This is just going to automatically detect what car we are in, and we want to click yes, that is the correct car. And service reminder, we just want to turn that off. And it just tells you here, service reminder setting, service workshop, 10,000 miles, 12 months. If you want to reuse the displayed value setting, blah blah blah, please press the reset button. Reset complete. Okay, that is now all done. So if we now go back and turn the ignition on, yeah, there was no service light on the dashboard. Happy days, that is a job well done. And of course it's had the spark plugs and the coil packs. The only thing it hasn't had is a fuel filter, but I'm guessing it had a new one of them when the engine was thrown in, so maybe that is up to date. But for now, that service light is off. Well, another video, and this car still isn't fixed. We have done everything that we wanted to do on the board, and we know what that engine light is, but of course we haven't yet fixed that misfire. And I wasn't going to upload this video until we'd fixed it, because I wanted to get it all done and finished in one video. But after hearing the news about the engine swap, I felt like this needed to be filmed and uploaded. Plus, this, I guess, is just the reality of swapping cars and not knowing anything about the cars you are swapping for. But I'm determined to still get to the bottom of why this car misfires on cold start, and I just hope that the end result isn't that we have to get rid of this car one way or another and maybe take a step backwards and able to go forwards again. But for now, the car still misfires. I think it's got the wrong engine in it. I don't know. What do you guys think that the issue could be? Any help in the comments is appreciated. Bear in mind, everything has been checked sensor wise, so the engine is doing exactly what it should be doing, but it just doesn't even know that it's misfiring. But if you did enjoy this one, please remember to like, comment and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.
You wear a hat they call dad. Me, I'm the dad in a hat. You just like clubbing and clothes. Me, I like afternoon naps. 3, I be missed for the road. My oldest like counting racks. My middle one, she's in a dirt bike. My youngest is just like a mama. The mama loves me and I love her, so if she wants something, it's never a bother. 3 to the ladies.